very looking forward to learn from Dr. Mahdi Qasqas from Canada. Inshallah, he will be our speaker for today. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So today's agenda, dear excellent brothers and sisters, we start by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha. Then we go through the welcome guidelines as usual. Then we will share a certificate of appreciation to our excellent scholar and teacher, Dr. Mahdi Qasqas. After that, we will listen to his lecture. And at the end of the lecture, we will have time for Q&As as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to share them in the chat. All right, let's start by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha. Just Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. All right, dear brothers and sisters, an honor to be with all of you. So just briefly about the Zoom etiquettes as usual, feel free to always keep your microphones muted. This is for the benefit of the lecturer. No recording or screenshots are allowed, but we will offer the recording uploaded to our YouTube channel within a couple of days for all of you to benefit from, inshallah. If you have any questions to Dr. Mahdi or to us as organizers, feel free to address them in the Zoom chat. The Zoom chat will be available throughout the whole session. If you need any live transcriptions, dear excellent brothers and sisters, feel free to press the More button in the Zoom application and request for it, and then you will be able to access it, inshallah. A little bit about ISIP and our mission statement, dear brothers and sisters. ISIP tried to be an inclusive space designed to connect people with diverse backgrounds interested in the field of Islamic psychology. So for us, it doesn't matter if you're a mental health professional, which country of origin you come from, which age you have. As long as you're interested in the field, you're more than welcome to join. We also aim to disseminate knowledge, share resources, and discuss best practices in a free and accessible manner. So everything that ISIP does is free of charge, dear brothers and sisters, so that everybody, no matter which social, economical background you have, can benefit from the sacred knowledge of Islamic psychology. We also want to be a platform to enable further development of people's personal and professional interests, studies and understanding of Islamic psychology within their communities and countries of origin. So how can you be involved and participate in ISIP? First and foremost, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. There you can find over 120 lectures within the field of Islamic psychology and Muslim mental health in different languages. You can also join our Islamic psychology WhatsApp groups for resource sharing and discussions. And you can also become a member of ISIP via our website at www.isip.foundation, where you can also get access to our digital library. All of this is free of charge. And the links to our YouTube channel and WhatsApp groups will be shared in the Zoom chat throughout the whole session, inshallah. Also, if you're interested to join our local and regional chapters, or if you want to establish a local chapter in your country and you don't have any ISIP chapter there, feel free to reach out to us. We will be more than honored to support you in that. We already have over 26 local and regional chapters all over the world, where we try to do dissemination of knowledge, resource sharing, different projects in the local countries' languages as well. So beyond English, we also work with Arabic, with Urdu, with Malayalam, with Hindi, with Turkish, with Bosnian and other languages as well. So feel free to join. It's an honor to have you with us, dear brothers and sisters. Now let's move on to the lecture today and why we all are joined today. So Dr. Mahdi Qasqas, he is a father of 4 and a registered psychologist with a PhD in social work from the University of Calgary in Canada. He's a khatib, motivational speaker, and a community leader since 1999, and had launched Muslim student associations in Mount Royal in Calgary and Macewan in Edmonton. His latest volunteer work is Future Leaders and Scholars projects focused on long-term integrated Islamic identity development. He also has multiple publications and is currently writing a book on Islamically modified cognitive behavioral therapy. He uses psychospiritual first aid mental health consultation model to culturally adapt and localize evidence-based practices to enhance health, well-being, and healing. And he established the Sunnah-Based Practice Framework. So mashallah, Dr. Mahdi has an excellent background. And Dr. Mahdi, our beloved brother, this is a certificate of appreciation from the whole ISIP movement and family for your time and efforts and in recognition of your continuing excellence in the field of Islamic psychology. And this will be emailed to you as well as a certificate of appreciation from all of our colleagues and members in the ISIP movement and organization. Barakallahu feekum, brother, Dr. Mahdi. So thank you for listening, dear brothers and sisters, for this brief introduction. Please forgive us for any shortcomings. Make dua for us. This is the month of so many blessings. So keep us in your duas. And we also will share a feedback form in the Zoom chat. We would appreciate if you could fill it out, because your feedback and nasiha is very crucial for us, dear brothers and sisters. Most welcome. So I will stop sharing my screen, inshallah. And without any further ado, Dr. Mahdi Qasqas, the floor is yours. Most welcome and honored to have you with us.
Jazakallah khair, brother. Jazakallah khair, brother Sayyid. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad Ashraf al-Mursaleen, amma ba'd. It is an honor for me to be here. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Sayyid, brother Sayyid. It's, I remember when we met in Turkey. It was, and like we were saying earlier, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Zuhal from Turkey, who is the matchmaker. She brought us all together. She introduced me to many people in Turkey, and subhanAllah, how this concept of afshu salama bainakum, spreading peace between you. We all have heard the hadith before, that you will not enter paradise until you believe. You will not believe until you love one another. And then the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us a guiding principle for life, not just an intervention. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us a guiding principle that allows us to build a model on top of it, which is afshu salama bainakum. In psychology, we call that the therapeutic alliance, don't we? There are rules to the therapeutic alliance. There's an algorithm, there's a systematic way of developing these models we call psychotherapy, right? Whether it's CBT, whether it's a person-centered approach. What I believe we kind of miss sometimes is we miss the value that is found within the ahadith and within our Islamic scripture. What we do sometimes is we hear something from the Western psychology that sounds similar to our Islamic understandings, and then right away we say, boom, that's it. Oh my God, it's amazing. So I supervise a lot of students, and usually in their master's program, they're still considering and thinking about how do they want to approach psychology from an Islamic lens. And they will jump on the first, sometimes some people will jump on the first thing that is somewhat similar to Islam. See, that's a really good place to start from, but that's not where we end. We don't end with a better understanding of Western psychology. Islamic psychology, we end with a better understanding of Islam. So I want to kind of just start off the presentation today by saying that when we talk about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when we talk about his noble companions, the Sahaba, we have to recognize that these were human beings that provided an example for us to follow. In their stories, the prophets of the past, there is a guide there. There's a model that we can follow. We have Sahaba that we look at for finance. We have Sahaba that we look at for battle. We have Sahaba that we look at for each essential role in the Muslim Ummah, correct? Well, what about counseling? There's not a single person in this room that probably does not agree that counseling, psychology, understanding human behavior, predicting human behavior, changing human behavior and thoughts and emotions is not one of the most pressing needs within the Ummah today. So which Sahabi do we use to model this whole mission after? And that's what today's presentation is about, the Counselling Sahabi. I'm going to talk to you today, inshallah, about Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman. I'm going to talk to you about him from both an academic point of view and an experiential point of view. His life, but also all of the ahadith that he narrated and some of the hadith that he stated, the things that he said, and how me and my team have conceptualized that into a model, an ethical model and a practice model. Sounds good? I don't do so well with like one-way conversations. So Sayyid, you're gonna have to engage me here, eh? Like at the very least, some minimal encouragers. You know, minimal encouragers. Yeah, I got that. So you keep your audio, unless you've got like cats and kids in the background. By all means, keep your audio on. I need to talk to somebody, right? It's the psychologist in me. Like we don't do self-psychology. You can't do self-therapy. Okay. However, you can do self-help. You can develop your own therapeutic program for yourself. Yes, all that is very possible. But you can't do self-counseling, because counseling is all about the relationship, right? Everything is about relationships. Our deen is about relationships. Our living, our state of being is about how we interact with each other, how we interact with ourselves, and above all else, how we interact with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, right? So I will share my screen so that we can kind of use a little bit of a presentation here, if that's okay. Can we see it? Can you see that?
Yes, Dr. Mahdi. We see it.
You don't see the meeting chat, do you?
No, nothing. We just see the PowerPoint presentation. That's perfectly.
And my picture as well?
And we see you as well. Yes,
Okay,
mashallah.
Do we see you?
You want to see me as well? Okay, let us pin me as well, so I will be with you.
There you go. Yes. So now people will judge how interesting this is based on your nonverbal reactions.
Okay, let's pin you. Now we didn't pin you. Just 1 second. We need to pin you as well.
Okay.
I think you only have one. Wait. Can we have 2 pin? Yeah, now. All right, let's go.
There we go. Okay. Now it's a conversation. All right. Bismillah. So, normally in my presentations, I love to get a feel of the room, get to know the people in the room, give my salams, at least hear salamu alaikum from everybody. Brother Syed, if you give me permission, I'd just like to hear assalamu alaikum from everybody. Can I ask everybody to just...
Yes, of course.
Assalamu alaikum. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum wa
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. There you go. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Afshu salama bainakum, right? I mean, you spread salams, good things happen. That's actually the essence of what we call the worship-centered practice. You know, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you know, iman, the sweetness of iman gets tasted after what? 2 people meet and greet for the sake of Allah alone, correct? There's some sort of intrinsic drive, intrinsic motivation, because iman has a taste to it, like, you know, a spiritual taste. I like to connect it to intrinsic motivation when I do my research, and when I did my doctoral dissertation on commitment and volunteer leaders in the Muslim community, and then connected this idea that when you do something for the sake of Allah alone, that's intrinsically motivating. That never stops. That's powerful. But remember, our iman increases and decreases. So if you yourself are ever feeling down, maybe the best thing to start with is say salam to somebody else, right? Now, we always have these recommendations we give people. Do this and you'll be fine. Do this and you'll be fine. You know, have sabr and you'll not feel this anymore. The answer to these questions, the answer to the fundamental question is how? If I have lower iman, how do I increase it? Do not prescribe the solution for me, right? The solution is sabr. The solution is shukr. The solution is iman, ultimately. What we do in the field of Islamic counseling psychology is that we identify the underlying mechanisms for people. We don't blame imams for standing on the minbar and saying, you should have sabr. They're right, they're not wrong. We do that all the time. Coaches do that all the time. You got to get up in the morning. How do I get up in the morning when I'm suffering from fatigue and irritability and I have depressive systems? You know, you got to get out there and try. How do I get out there? I can't even get my feet on the floor. So one thing that I've put together, I actually patented it or trademarked it in Canada. It's called psycho-spiritual first aid. What is the first step? Because remember, a last resort should never be a first response. If you are feeling down, you're not going to jump straight to antidepressants. You're going to try something first. You're going to try to exercise. You're going to try to do some social activities, maybe a little bit of volunteering, maybe head to the mosque, maybe try anything first. So this whole presentation is built upon this psycho-spiritual first aid concept. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you is universal. It'll apply to, inshallah, the 30 or 40 countries that are represented today. But you have to recognize that your community, your circle, some of you are imams and wa'idat, leaders, male and female, within your circles. Far be it from me or Brother Sayyid or anybody else to tell you how to be within your community. It's not for us to do. That's why I believe strongly in localization. You take these general principles and you localize it to your specific context. In fact, that's exactly what we do as psychologists. We take what we know generally works from the evidence, and we tailor it to a specific case. That's evidence-based practice in a nutshell. There's all this research that tells us exposure therapy works for this, and we do it in different ways, and we see, inshallah, good results. If we don't see the results, we try something else. Similarly, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you're grateful for something, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase it. But what if you are grateful and it doesn't get increased? Does that mean that the rule is wrong, or that maybe you didn't do it right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, when you fast so that you may achieve this taqwa, this God consciousness, this God fearingness, this God awareness, that it's a different state of being, correct? Well, what if you don't get that after fasting? Does that mean that the theory, that the Quranic qanun, the Quranic law was wrong? A'udhu billah. It just means that we probably didn't do it right, or that the reward has not yet been seen, or the reward is there, we're just too blind to see it. So whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whatever His Messenger says, is haqq to us, right? It's truth. So how do we take that truth? Begin with it, not end with it. Begin with truth. Begin with Quran. Begin with the Sunnah, and develop our models from there. That is where the Counselling Sahabi comes into play. This is just one approach of using the life of one Sahabi, Hudayf ibn al-Yaman, radiallahu an, to derive ideal counselor characteristics, states of being and doing in therapy. It's not the only way though, because each one of you might have a different approach altogether. You may choose that, you know what, my model doesn't model after a Sahabi per se, but it models after one of the righteous scholars, Imam Ghazali, or Imam Ibn Qayyim. Doesn't matter what you model it after. The idea is the foundation of it all is Islam regardless. Correct? That's something that the entire Muslim ummah can agree on. There are a lot of things that we disagree on. And we haven't even started speaking about the horizontal tension, the tension within the ummah, right? I'm in Saudi. Many of you are in Turkey. I don't even need to start saying about the minor, small differences between Hanbali and Hanafi fiqh, correct? Yet we're still all under, inshallah, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. But now if you go politically, things start changing. People start differentiating one another. So as psychologists, as counselors, we have to recognize that one of the essential principles of being a counselor in a community is that you are accepted by all, that you have qabul. You know this word qabul, Sayyid?
Yes, acceptance.
Right? Yes, acceptance. Now, but it comes in a hadith where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he calls out to Jibreel, you know this hadith where the Rasul says that when Allah loves somebody, he calls out to Jibreel and he says, "Ya Jibreel, I love so and so." Imagine Allah the Almighty loving you. Like, brothers and sisters, you do things that is deserving of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love. You're a mother caring for children. You're a father caring for children. You help other people. You say, Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barak ala Sayyidina Muhammad. You do things every single day that earns you the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Allah loves you, he calls out to Jibreel, he says, "Yeah, oh Jibreel, I love so-and-so," saying your name. So love him. And then Jibreel calls out to the inhabitants of the heavens. And then the hadith ends by saying, and then Qabul is established for them on earth. This sense of people just love them. People just like them. Have you ever met somebody? First time, you've never even spoken. You're like, something about this person I really like. I really like this person. I don't know why. I just love this person. Why? You don't know. Maybe that's Qabul. Maybe your souls have met, perhaps. But the idea is maybe that's Qabul. And so when we have a sense of Qabul amongst the people, that's a very, very, very powerful state of being. That's a privilege to have in a community, isn't it? So it's so important to recognize that this sense of acceptance amongst the people is an essential quality of a counselor, which means what? You can't be going online bashing people all the time if you're expecting to be a counselor. You can't go online and take such a strong position against people within your community if you want to be a counselor. What if that person that you're attacking shows up in your office? What are you going to say? Oh, I'm just a hypocrite online? Here I'll be non-judgmental? Yeah, right. So don't do it. There has to be a group of people within the community that choose this role, and this role comes with certain rules, certain standards. This is what a professionally regulated organization does. It disciplines its own members, right? As a psychologist in Alberta, by the way, some of you might be asking, well, how does he have a PhD in social work and he's a psychologist? In my province, master's is the terminal degree for to become a psychologist, because it's something that's very unique around the world. And so you better believe it. My province is going to probably graduate most of the psychologists in Canada pretty soon. So Sister Fatima, Toronto, we're coming for you. But the idea is, the idea within our communities, we have to have some sort of rules, some sort of guidelines, behavior, ways of interacting with each other. That's what we call ethical codes and practice standards. It's how to behave within the world that we're living. Alhamdulillah, Islam gives us this guidance. Now what we need to do, we have the truth there, the Quran and the Sunnah. Now what we need to do is we need to unpack it a little bit, develop small mini models that can work, that can lead to the goals that we're hoping to achieve. Does that make the argument, I hope, Sayyid? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to talk about the importance of the importance of a code of ethics.
Yeah. Actually, I had a lecture a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Said Nasser. He's from UK, and he was speaking about code of ethics of Islamic counseling. So it's very important, actually, that we have. And also what I was thinking about was in the aspect of accepting differences, that we need to focus on what unites us. And that's what we do in ISIP, which is the Quran and Sunnah, right? That's the primary sources that unite us. But then there is multiplexity in everything. There's different approaches in Islamic psychology, even though different scholars derived their knowledge from the Quran and Sunnah, and then they applied perhaps with different methodologies or different orientations. And that's perfectly fine, and that's the multiplexity. But the unity comes from the Quran and Sunnah and Tawheed, of course. So I totally agree.
You got to remember that, unity without diversity is hegemony.
Yeah.
And diversity without unity is chaos.
Yeah.
So there's got to be wasatiyya. There's a balance between them.
Yeah.
But it's how we bring these things together that is the realm of the academic disciplines, right? The researchers out there are doing that. Now, in practice, though, most of what we argue about in the community at the scholarly level and academic level, in practice, does not really matter. I'll be honest. And most people will tell you the same thing. Most practitioners will say, it doesn't matter much. Why? Because when I meet somebody, I tailor my approach to that specific person. Look, I'll tell you, if I'm working with a Salafi, Sufi, Ikhwani, Tablighi, I will tailor to them. A Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, I will tailor to them. That's where the difference between a psychologist and a da'iyah begins, right? It begins with the difference between counseling and advice. Counseling is responding to the right things. Advice is saying the right things, okay? We can come out and say the right things. I can come out and tell you about how everybody here should spend more time in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should make more dua. But at what point do I respond to your individual needs? What if you're somebody who is constantly making dua, and yet nothing is happening? You're still feeling down. Maybe your dua is being done in the wrong way. Maybe instead of dua, you're better off making dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in a hadith Qudsi, whoever distracts themselves with my remembrance from what they're asking for, I will give them the best of what people ask. It's a lot more eloquent in Arabic, of course, but the idea here is sometimes dua acts as a way of rumination. It's like a passive-aggressive dua. Oh Allah, get me my rights from them. Oh Allah, get me my rights from them. And what are you doing? Constantly remembering the dhulm that those people did to you, versus immersing yourself in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's a hikmah, there's judgments when it comes to integrating Islam into the life of a specific individual. The knowledge and the skills, that's easy to learn. But the judgment and the diligence, the hikmah and the juhud, those require supervision. This is why in our disciplines, without supervision, you can never become a professional. Yet when it comes to Islam, we think that somebody can just open up the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and understand everything in it without any study. Yet with psychology, if somebody told you, hi, I'm a psychologist, and what is your credentials? I read a book. I have 35 or I have 43 years of experience being a human. You know what I mean? Like there's standards, and those standards will not emerge naturally, by the way. Chaos will emerge naturally. Conflict will emerge naturally, right? Frustration, irritation will emerge naturally. Everything else requires leadership. It requires governance. And so I want to start today's, I want to start this initiative. I'm almost done my presentation, by the way, but I want to start this initiative, at least locally in my province, with some core ethical and practice standards that everybody can agree on and localize to their own communities. So when we started this project, it kind of emerged in bits and pieces. Nothing ever really emerges naturally in practice-based research, right? Remember, I'm a clinician first before I'm an academic and researcher. So I practice a lot. I see thousands I've seen thousands of Muslims over the last 7-8 years, and much more before that as a youth counselor. So I have a lot of experiential knowledge, right? With respect to the Islamic knowledge, alhamdulillah, 2 of my students are scholars who are becoming psychologists, one a clinical social worker, one a psychologist, Imam Murad and Imam Sayyid al-Amin. They're, mashallah, these guys are giants. They're amazing. So I like to rely on them for the Islamic knowledge, even though, yes, of course, yes, I give khutbahs. I've been giving khutbahs for 20 years. And yes, I have Islamic knowledge, but why? Why would I pretend like I'm a scholar in Islam when I'm not? Why don't I just ask the scholars? Why should we pretend like somehow we have to ask Aaron Beck or Ellis or Bandura or Freud or one of these people who had some theories and ideas and did some great work in our field, but they didn't invent human behavior. They didn't invent counseling. Counseling existed before English was a language. So we derive so much from their lives thinking that they perfected it, when we know the Sahaba perfected it, when we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us truth. So how do we take some of the hikmah from Western psychology and take the haqq from Islam and integrate those two? Sure. Okay. But at the end of the day, if we're always focusing on the Western lens, right? We're looking at the world, trying to understand it from a Western perspective, we're going to miss out on so much, which is why those of you that are not familiar, the American Psychological Association, which is probably the leading governing body of psychology worldwide, you can argue that if you like, but they made a stinging indictment against themselves. They gave a huge apology. If you're interested in it, just Google apology, APA, psychology, and you'll see what I'm talking about. They apologized for their systemic racism for years. So if we're going to follow the people that came before us, inch by inch, step by step, even into that racist lizard's hole that they crawled out of, then we are going to be disgraced. And the Prophet ﷺ warned us about the lizard's hole, didn't he? So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to emerge from whatever crisis we're in, but we don't do that by destroying our relationships. We do that by enhancing relationships. So we look at Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman, right? Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman had some key characteristics that I think we can all look at and say, you know what? Yeah, that makes sense. And that's up to you. It's up to you to decide whether or not you consider what I'm saying credible. In other words, whether or not you have qabul towards it, you accept it. And by acceptance, I mean here, you don't reject it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying you have to believe in it 100%. What I'm saying is that the standard that we're trying to reach here is credibility, not validity, which means we don't need an RCT or a meta-analysis of RCTs to say that what we're talking about is truthful. What we need is the people that we're using this with, do they find it credible? When you provide counseling to somebody, what do you think they're going to be convinced more of? Their own opinion or the opinion of others? Now, if it's the opinion of others, what do you call that? This person has a problem with self-esteem. We need to make this person a little more independent, more autonomous. And then we criticize that behavior of worrying about what other people think. And yet we go ahead and we encourage that within our field, that we should be worried about what other people think about our deen more than what we think about it, more than the people that we're trying to help think about it. So this is the huge difference between research and practice. In practice, you can throw away an entire model and replace it with a whole new one for the sake of the client. In fact, developing a new therapy for every single client you have is the essence of evidence-based practice. It's a new therapy for this person. However, you can't just base it on your desires and your whims. There has to be a structure for it, right? So whatever approach you take, whatever model you use, whatever theoretical inclinations you have, whatever paradigms you have, even from an Islamic perspective, one thing we can all agree on is that Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman was an amazing Sahabi, correct? An amazing Sahabi. Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman was known to be quick-witted. He is also very, very, very famous for one main thing, which is that he is the secret keeper of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He had the names of the hypocrites. Okay, which means what? Which means here's a man who has knowledge that nobody else has. Okay? And I want you to think about that for a second. A lot of you are therapists and counselors and you hold on to the secrets of people. Is holding a secret enough to be a counselor? It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. So that's not the only reason why he would be the counseling Sahabi. That would be reductionist. We do that all the time, don't we? We take one ayah from the Quran and we jump on it and we say, here, we've got Islamic integration. I saw that in the manual for religious cognitive behavioral therapy. Read the manual for Muslims. Jameel, what's the ayah? Taha ma anzalna alayka al-Qur'an. Can you recite it for me quickly? Taha ma anzalna alayka ma anzalna alayka al-Qur'ana litashqa, right? In the manual for religious CBT, it says that, oh, see, even Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was told not to take it too hard on himself. And then they quoted the verse in Surah Taha, we have not revealed the Quran for you to be distressed. And the problem there is, that's not the tafsir of the ayah. Tafsir ibn Kathir and many of the scholars, the Quraysh they say to Muhammad, oh, Allah only revealed this Quran so that Muhammad can be distressed. Liyashqa. And Allah responds in a consoling fashion to Muhammad. Ma anzalna alayka al-Qur'ana litashqa. It's not a, oh, take it easy on yourself. You're being too hard on yourself. That's not, a'udhu billah. When somebody's given knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants them to have a life of abundance, a good life. But you see how they take sometimes an ayah, kalamullah, the words of Allah, and they reduce it to something to just prove a point that they've already came up with. This is ad hoc, after the fact. Something that I actually had to train some of the imams that I work with. Don't do that. Because we naturally do that. Oh, yes. In Islam, we have this too. No, don't do that. Don't say that Eid is the Muslim Christmas. It's not. Christmas is a celebration. Eid is a celebration. They have the same roots, celebration. But Eid is the Muslim Christmas is saying what? That the norm is Christmas. Everything else is added onto it. This is, by the way, the essence of our Eurocentric view of the world. In America and Canada and probably the UK as well, we do that all the time. It's us and then the world. It's us and them. We do that all the time. And alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, the APA is recognizing that, you know what, there's a lot of racism in psychology because of that Eurocentric view. Because the foundation is usually Western norms, Western principles, and then everything gets built on that. But the solution to get out of this crisis psychology is, no, hold on a second. Let's take a look at the original assumptions first. Now, would anybody say that secrecy and anonymity is an essential characteristic for a therapist? Yes, 100%. That's not a Western concept. Ya Jama'ah, that's not an individualistic concept versus collectivist. It has nothing to do with that. In fact, if you promise not to say something and you say something, you have you have a characteristic of a hypocrite. So having that sense of secrecy is essential. But we also have to be quick-witted because we need to be able to adapt instantly while working with people. And the other thing is this concept called fidelity and flexibility, right? Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman followed the rules to the T. He did not violate the rules of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he was able to maneuver quickly when necessary within the boundaries. And I don't think we have time for this story. This is the one I would have loved to just talk about. But what I'd like you to do, if you get a chance, is look at Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman's journey in the Ahzab, in the Battle of the Trench, how he crossed enemy lines, adapted, followed the rules of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was quick-witted, and all the while was able to manage his biological fear. Because usually when we're in a state of fear, our frontal cortex is not working so well, is it? Critical thinking is not there. It's just instant survival mode, survival mode, survival mode. So there's a very, very deep lesson to be learned at the biological, cognitive, social, cultural basis of behavior from just that story alone. But that's not where we derive the other characteristics from, right? This is where we say, hey, you know what? If you're somebody who's quick-witted, which many of you are, alhamdulillah, if you're somebody who recognizes that, well, there's rules for a reason. It's not just haphazard, right? But we have to understand that these rules, there should always be flexibility within them. Not to change the rules. Otherwise, imagine somebody says, you know what? I don't think I want to put the pillar here today. I want to put it somewhere else. Would you live in that house? Would you live in a house where the builder didn't follow any rules, wasn't regulated, read a book on building and just decided? What about building somebody's life? They come to you mutashattitin, they're just all over the place, and they want you to tijma' shamlahum, to bring them back. And they're trusting you sometimes to give them advice or responding to certain things that they would never ask anybody else. Just like when you go to a doctor. It's haram for you to do a lot of things in front of people, but it becomes halal in front of the doctor, doesn't it? So there's a discipline that we have that is different than most other fields, isn't it? Because now we have to consider some of these new circumstances. Somebody comes to you and wants to talk about their spouse. Well, isn't that backbiting? Where is our fiqh when it comes to understanding our roles and our boundaries as well? Because yes, at one point in time, it might become backbiting, and that might even guide you to bring the focus of the session back to what matters most, which is the solution. So when it comes to the solution, لِكُلِّ دَاءٍ دَوَاءٍ, every problem has a solution. This is an attitude, an essential attitude. However, it doesn't stop there. You don't just say لِكُلِّ دَاءٍ دَوَاءٍ. فَإِذَا أُصِيبُوا دَاءُ دَوَاءُ الدَّاء بَرَأَ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. If the solution is matched to the problem, then by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they'll be cured from it, right? That's where our knowledge comes in. وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. This is why we learn more about psychology. We learn more about other sciences, medicine, because we want to match problems with solutions for people, right? And that's where our theories come in, is that this person in front of me is a human being. And as you said, Brother Sayyid, this concept of multiplexity, humans are very complex, and they're intertwined. There's so many different things. When we speak of multiplexity in society, we're talking about these different social networks and relationships. My relationship with Dr. Zuhal affects my relationship with you, which affects my relationship with Dr. Keshavarzi, which affects. So when you look at multiplexity at the meso level of analysis, or the societal level, at the social level, you start to see that not having any hikmah as a counselor and just coming out and being, blasting everybody is bad for everyone. Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman was given the choice to be Muhajir or Ansar, was he not? This is a long story, and I encourage you to listen about, hear about it. But he was given the choice. If you choose, you can be amongst the Muhajirun. If you choose, you can be amongst the Ansar. He had and this, of course, this was a temporary state, but we extrapolate from that is that be somebody who everybody can say that, oh, this person is part of us. But once you take a side, stick to that side, right? You can't flip-flop. And so Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman chose to be amongst the Ansar. Okay. But the idea here is, as we learn how to build these relationships, as we learn how to, develop the skills, we have to understand that there's a state of being and doing. See, counseling is simple. Okay. Not simplistic, but it's simple. What is counseling other than communication plus relationship? Honestly, take a look at this slide. This summarizes pretty much everything that you need to know about counseling skills. Communication is broken down into 4 things. All communication, 4 categories: questions, statements, minimal encouragers like the the nonverbal, and then the nonverbal behaviors. And then these micro skills, okay, when you put them together, 2 or more of them becomes a technique. 2 or more techniques becomes a strategy. With these strategies, you have skills. However, without the theoretical underpinning, without the qawaneen, without the rules, well, you're just talking. That's just communication. Maybe it's effective communication. Maybe it is effective listening, and maybe that's enough for what you need. But if you want to do therapy, psychotherapy, well, there's a lot more now. Now you're talking about the nature of human beings. How can we predict, identify problems, solve problems, right? And that has a lot to do with adapting to the client. So just to kind of summarize here, the way we put all this stuff together, I mean, if you were to write a paper and submit it to a journal without any literature review, what would happen? Sayyid, what would happen if you had a journal and somebody said, I decided not to do a literature review, I just submitted my own ideas? What would you say about such a person? You'd say, listen.
I think that our tradition will resolve that, because our tradition is a peer-to-peer review tradition. Like, our tradition is an accumulative tradition. We build upon each other's work. We read it. We come with constructive feedback. We have adab al-ikhtilaf. So just by adhering to our tradition within Islamic thought is sufficient enough. And unfortunately, modernity has disconnected us with our tradition. Modernity has disconnected the whole aspects of silsila and sanad. And I think that we as Muslims actually established the whole peer-to-peer review process.
I know, eh? That's what
established the whole empirical way of working with knowledge inquiry. So yeah, it's very nafsani, Dr. Mahdi. It's very nafsani when we think that we don't need any peer-to-peer review.
No, of course not. There's only one instance,
etc. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's only one instance where you may not do a literature review, and that's if there's absolutely nothing about that topic. Okay. Only one field or school would argue that that's grounded theory. Okay. But that would mean what? I went to Mars and I met new people. But they're not people. Okay, what literature review are you going to start from? Earth? Finding comparisons? But this doesn't exist. However, what type of literature review do we do when it comes to Islamic sciences? So we put together what we call the 40 hadith methodology. You can do it in this case here, though. What we did is a scoping review, all the hadith narrated by Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, and then of course it says 166. That's not all the hadith, because some of those had to be, screened. For example, there's Abu Hudayfa, there's Hudayfa's sister, there's, so they were screened. But the whole point is that there was a systematic process of arriving at our conclusions. Then what we can do is we share that process with others so they can critique the process, right? It has to be falsifiable. We have to be able to say we might be wrong. Otherwise, that's ghurur. That's a type of arrogance. I'm right and everybody else is wrong. Well, prove that you're right. Unless it's Quran and Sunnah, we're all fallible. Our scholars are fallible. Even Sahaba can make mistakes, right? But the whole idea here is our job in the social sciences is not, social sciences has given up on the concept of certainty, by the way. It's all probability, all of it. Quran is certain. The Rasul ﷺ is certain. Everything else, probability. And that's okay. We work within probabilities. It might work, it might not work. And we try again. But the essential characteristics that were derived from the Counselling Sahabi, aside from, some of the state of being. So if you are looking for a good student to train, for example, for the supervisors out there, quick-wittedness, their ability to, keep a secret, their ability to follow the rules, but also be flexible, but also, their propensity for post-traumatic growth. Are they able to bounce back from a crisis? You can ask a lot of people, they'll tell you, for example, that one of the hikmas behind the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam suffering was that he can tell somebody, I know what it's like. When we're in a privileged position talking to refugees, sometimes we miss the boat altogether. When you're somebody who's never had depression and you're speaking to somebody who's depressed, you find it challenging. Why don't they just think differently? Well, that's what depression does. Doesn't let them think the same way that you think. And that becomes a very big problem for people who don't know how to deal with depression. Why? Because they start saying things like, why are you depressed? You have new shoes. Like, oh, really? If wealth and depression were correlated, then the Sahaba would have been the most depressed of people. How many of them had anything? A'udhu billah. We can't make those conclusions, right? But the idea, though, is Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman watched his father get killed in front of his eyes. And he's crying out to them. He's saying, my father, my father. They killed him accidentally. And yet he forgave them. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, take the blood money. He says, I donate it fi sabilillah. You gotta listen to his story and you tell me. I would love to hear your thoughts. What other lessons do you derive from his life? So he was accepted, Muhajirin and Ansar. And there's a story around that. Empathy, okay? But also this idea of primary prevention as well. So the Hudhayfa ibn Yaman says that the people used to ask the Prophet about the good things to come. I used to ask him about the evil, lest I should be overtaken by it. As psychologists and counselors and therapists and social workers, isn't primary prevention our ultimate objectives? We're trying to prevent things from happening to begin with. So that's an attitude, though. That's a way of thinking, to want to prevent problems from occurring. It's not for everyone. This field of ours, this thing of ours, is not for everyone. Not everybody can look at a problem in the same way, right? Some people are followers. Hudhayfa ibn Yaman narrates, he says, do not be a people without a will of your own. Saying, if people do good, we'll do good. If they do wrong, we'll do wrong. But do good if people do good, and don't act unjustly if they do evil. This is the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Narrated by Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman. You start to see how you put these 40, 50 hadith together, you start to see a model created, a framework to work from. If somebody treats you badly, as a therapist, don't treat them badly. Sometimes it's not about you. Could you imagine if while you're doing therapy, your client yells at you and you start yelling back at them? Get out of my office! How dare you yell at me? Come on. I mean, this person is obviously not yelling at you. You got to have some sort of emotional control. And that's where this is perhaps the essence of the Sunnah-Based Practice Framework, and especially the ethical side of it. These 5 ahadith, okay? These first 4 ahadith, and some of you have probably heard this from me before, these first 4 ahadith are the pro-akhlaq principles, and then the hadith on nifaq, anti-nifaq, okay? من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا وليصمت. Whoever believes in Allah on the last day, speak good or remain silent. I won't go over these. This is probably a whole different presentation. But these 5 ahadith, if we spent the next 20 years analyzing them, we still wouldn't arrive at the conclusion. So why not? There's a solid framework to get started from. Ethical framework. If you can do these things, you will become a great ethical therapist. Competence, that comes later, but at least start with ethics. Don't lie, don't break your promise. If you argue, don't argue wickedly. What happens when you're talking to somebody with no knowledge? You start to argue the stupidest of points, right? You start to argue something that you don't even believe in yourself. Sometimes just saying, I don't know, I'll get back to you on that one, is more than enough. You don't have to know everything when it comes to working with people as a counselor or as a therapist or psychologist. But it's hard for us to say, I don't know. It's funny because in Canada and the United States, saying I love you is a big deal, right? Whereas in the Middle East, we say I love you all the time. But in Canada and the United States, people say I don't know all the time. In the Middle East, impossible to hear I don't know. Everybody knows something. Go down to the street, it's hilarious. And this is a stereotype, so I apologize to my Middle Eastern brothers and sisters. But I'm Palestinian myself, but that doesn't give me a right to say this stuff. But go to the street and ask the person, where's such and such a place, and make it up. They'll tell you, it's that way. It's like, what? Are you telling me to get out of here? So it's, anyways, but say I don't know. You don't know, say you don't know. When the Sahaba didn't know, they went to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. After he passed away, they felt like they had nobody. What were they supposed to do? And then they figured it out. They compiled the hadith. They compiled the verses of Allah. They brought it together. And now, today, all of us read the same mushaf, right? Same words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're reading the same hadith. They preserved our history. And just like you said, Brother Sayyid, with this modernization, we forgot our history. We became jahil. And now we're trying to access somebody else's history that stole it from us and polluted it, and it's so complicated, right? However, كنا أذلاء فعزنا الله بالإسلام فإذا ابتغينا العزة بغيره أذلنا الله. That we had honor. We had it. It was there. It's all there. You could see it, as we all know. And then we gave up on that. But what did we give up on first? I like to believe we gave up on our akhlaq first. We gave up on our akhlaq. We never gave up on our aqidah. We gave up on our akhlaq. So even if we do all of this, Islamic psychology, wallahi, thumma wallahi, thumma wallahi, if it risks the relationship between two Muslims, I don't want to have anything to do with it. If I ever hear somebody attacking another Muslim, I lose all respect for that person. I'm not talking about warning people. I'm not talking about mawa'id. I'm not even talking about imams doing that or religious scholars. No, I'm not in their category. I'm talking about the world of Islamic psychology. If you believe that bashing other Muslims is a good idea, I can't trust you. You have to follow some sort of akhlaq principles. Yes, there are huge differences between Sufis and Salafis. We know that. We're not dumb. And yes, I like to take the underdog approach. So if I'm with a group of Salafis, and if they're attacking Sufis, I'll defend Sufis. If I'm with a group of Sufis and they'll attack Salafis, I'll defend Salafis. Of course I will. Why wouldn't I? This is my duty as a believer, to protect the people that aren't there, but to protect the people that are there from ghiba and namima. If somebody wants to have a scholarly debate about a aqidah issue, fine, bring forth your evidence. Hatu burhanakum in kuntum sadiqun, right? Bring forth your evidence. But if it's just a matter of let's just bash other people, we can't afford that right now. We need each other. Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman goes to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam one day and says, Ya Rasulullah, I have a tongue which is sharp and cutting against my family, and I fear it will lead me to the hellfire. Like, I want you to think about that for a second. How many of us who spend all day working with the misery of other people, you don't think you're going to carry some of that home? You don't think that's heavy on our soul? How do you deal with that? Who's going to suffer if you don't deal with it properly, if you don't have boundaries to protect yourself from? It's going to be your family. See, Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman was walking around with this knowledge that this person perhaps that he just saw is a hypocrite, but he can't say anything. He can't even non-verbally show his dismay. Now you try doing that. Try seeing somebody you hate and even your non-verbals not even show it. Watch your face in the mirror when you listen to a lecturer who you can't stand. Just record your face and just see if any changes in your face occur. You're just, but anyways, that's a different experiment altogether. The real kind of idea here, though, is that when we look at the life of Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, we can see so many arguments in favor of him being the counseling Sahabi. He also narrates the hadith that it is not befitting for a believer to humiliate themselves. This hadith saved me. I won't share the details of this conference, but I was at a conference a long time ago, and I was really, really, really upset. I felt that Islam was so disrespected. Now, if this was a non-Muslim conference, oh man, I would have went nuts. I would have rallied. I'm not a quiet person. I would have said something. But it was an Islamic conference, a Muslim mental health conference, and it would just, I got so frustrated with something. And I told myself, you know what? I'm out. I'm going to take a mental health day. I'm going to spend the rest of the day in the hotel. Okay. By the way, none of you know about this conference, so please don't try to think, oh, I wonder what conference it was. You don't know what it is. Forget I even said what it was. I just want to bring up this point. And one of my students, Imam Sayyid, he shared this hadith with me, and it comforted me. He said, what are you doing putting yourself in that position anyway? Get out. Do not take on something you cannot bear. I don't have to stay there. I had permission to just say, okay, yeah, this is not doing it for me. I would never do that before because I have this sense of commitment. I promised, I gave my word, whatever. Anyways, long story short, things got a lot better after that. It wasn't a problem anymore. But think about in your own world. There are certain gatherings, there are certain projects, there are certain things that maybe you just need to get out of it. Don't take on a trial that you cannot bear, right? I don't mean this in the sense of لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, right? I don't mean that. That's a totally different, that's an ayah. In this case, you will humiliate yourself if you stick around. Don't do it. If this is a field that you think is too much for you, you don't have to stay in it. However, be sure that you have a framework that you're using. Otherwise, of course, it's going to feel like, oh my God, this stuff is impossible. Yes, imposter syndrome will sink in. You'll start thinking to yourself, I can't, people think I'm this counselor, I'm this great person. I'm a fraud. I don't know what I'm doing. It's luck. I just got lucky. That's not true. There's something good about you. And I promise you, if your relationship with Allah is good, you might get that love from Allah, and you have that qabul. And if you have qabul, acceptance amongst the people, well, people want to talk to you. And if while you talk to them, you have akhlaq and no nifaq, well, now you have a therapeutic relationship. All you need now is some training. Your state of being and doing is good to go. Now you start building on that. And that's why here we have, just a breakdown of what all therapies require, right? And so when we talk about change agents, what leads to change, this hadith is one of the essential ones for Islamic counseling psychology. Temptations are brought to the heart one by one. If we accept them, what happens? And if we reject them, what happens? There's not much time for me to explain this, maybe in a different presentation, but this is something that maybe my brothers and sisters in the Islamic psychology world might kind of not like. Should I say it? Say it?
Dr. Mahdi, you're allowed, we believe in academical freedom. You're allowed to say everything as long as it's adab al-ikhtilaf and it's with good ihsan and it's not,
I know, right? Exactly.
Your lecture is against nifaq and it's for good.
Could you imagine? Anyways, perfect. That's it. And honestly, it's not something you won't like. I just said that to let some of the audience consider something. When I said that, how many of you got ready to listen? Not much people are going to hang on every word. Sometimes you need to infuse a little bit of anxiety to get people waking up, especially as we wrap up this presentation. But here's the thing. Without akhlaq, no, we shouldn't say anything. If you don't have akhlaq, don't say it. But akhi, it's the truth. Don't say it. The truth is akhlaq first. Say it with akhlaq. If you don't know how to say it with akhlaq, then you're the wrong person to say it. من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت. Speak good or stay silent. There's a million ways to tell somebody they're wrong. You chose the worst one. So here, the thing where the Islamic counseling psychology model is differentiated from most of the other models is literally in the view of human nature, right? Except that it's not the view of human nature that differs as much as it is how we utilize this concept or model of the nafs to initiate change. And so instead of using, for example, ruh, our model has jasad, qalb, aqil, and shahawat. And this hadith is where the shahawat comes from. Okay? So that's for another day, for another discussion, probably more for the academic side of things. But psycho-spiritual first aid is all about managing those shahawat, those impulsive, intrusive thoughts, those impulsive feelings. But remember, we're human beings. We're driven by shahawat, by drives, by needs. Shahawat here doesn't always mean the negative ones, right? It could mean that impulse to do something good. Badiru bil a'mal as-salih, right? Be quick to do good deeds. So there's a whole kind of concept around that. But at the end of the day, however we develop our models, however we, work towards Islamic psychology, we have to recognize that our relationships with each other is what matters most. Our relationship today with Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman radiyallahu an, I hope has changed. I hope you can now look at this Sahabi and appreciate his sacrifice and appreciate how much more we can benefit from understanding his life. And who did he learn from? Khayru khalqillah, the best of all creation, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. There is a lesson in their stories, right? And last but not least, whatever it is we do is going to take a lot of effort and struggle. Just add Islam and mix is not going to work, my dear brothers and sisters. Having a foundation, even a basic foundation in some Islamic sciences is important. If not, team up with somebody who does. Don't do it alone. Make sure that when you think about a verse in the Quran, that you at least have somebody to go to say, you know what? Am I understanding this ayah correctly? Because maybe your depth of knowledge in that ayah is higher than others, but at least get some peer review, right? وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Those who strive hard, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide them to the right path. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the muhsineen. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us all to strive hard to maintain our relationships, to have a solid pro-akhlaq, anti-nifaq code of ethics, and to have this idea that we want to do worship-centered practice. We want to serve for the sake of Allah alone, and we do that better when we strive hard with each other, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah khairan, dear Dr. Mahdi Qasqas. Thank you so much for honoring us by presenting this very beneficial lecture. I think I speak for all of our brothers and sisters and members in ISIP that we really appreciate all of your efforts. And there was a lot of insights that was gained from this excellent lecture, and specifically to do it as our first lecture during the holy month of Ramadan. It's very important. It's very important. So barakallahu feekum, dear Ustad. Please, dear brothers and sisters, round of digital applause to our dear Ustad and lecturer, our beloved brother, Mahdi. Now we just have 40 minutes left, because I'm mindful that people have iftar to, and people have like different praying times. So we'll just do like 2-3 questions, inshallah, with your permission, Dr. Qasqas. So let me just go to the question document here. So, yes,
sorry. Can I be selfish for a second here?
Tell me.
Can we just transition quickly here? And I would love to hear either salam or jazakallah. Hearing jazakallah khair is awesome. Like, I would love, like, there's 80 people here. I want their dua. Can everybody just, if you're okay with it, just unmute, say whatever you need to say. If you need to swear at me, you could do that later, okay? Not right now. But if there's anything you'd like to make dua, this is me being selfish. I'm in desperate need of their dua.
Just got to be mindful. We have so many people, so it might take a lot of minutes. So perhaps
just like we did with the salam.
Okay, so we just do like, all right, no problem.
2 seconds,
so, dear brothers and sisters, briefly, just 30 seconds, please. Just unmute yourself and say whatever you feel in 2 sentences, all right? Not like 1 minute speech.
No, all at the same time. All at the same time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is collecting it. Don't worry.
All right, let's collect it.
And if they do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, the angels will make dua for them as well. So let's do it. Unmute and say whatever you want to say.
جزاك الله خيرا كثيرا.
بارك الله فيك.
I swear, wallahi, I feel like my soul has been refueled there, right? Like I'm in Mecca currently, and behind me is it's not Ghar Thawr, but Ghar Thawr is a little bit away. And subhanallah, how you can only imagine how Abu Bakr as-Siddiq felt when he heard the verse إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ. You know what I mean? And you just think there's something about loving people for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's so powerful. So I love you all for the sake of Allah. Jazakallah khair. So thank you. And brother Said, thank you for letting me do that. Please continue.
Of course. I love that. I love that. We should do it more, mashallah. We also, one of our co-founders on ISIP, Sister Fatima, was just a couple of days ago doing Umrah, mashallah. So alhamdulillah. I was actually in Mecca 2 months ago doing Umrah. So yes, subhanallah. Please keep us in your precious dua while you're in the holy.
Maybe the next ISIP retreat will be
inshallah.
in Jama'at.
Inshallah, we're actually discussed that to have something. I discussed with some of our colleagues in Saudi, if that is possible. Inshallah, that will be an honor. Barakallahu feekum, brother. Barakallahu feekum, Dr. Qasqas. So the first question is from Sister Nur Husna, one of our beloved colleagues from ISIP's Malaysian chapter. She is writing, Assalamu alaikum, Ustad. The master-disciple relationship is one of the great importance within Sufi practice. Taqwa is greatly valued within this relationship. God-fearing pity is seen as a great religious devotion because it allows for unhesitating obedience for the order's superior. Can this be related with narcissist disorder personality and borderline personality disorder?
Oh, wow. I don't know. Because you're talking about two different realms here. The other thing is narcissistic personality disorder. One thing that you need to understand about personality disorders, the other thing is, sister, I don't know much about the Sufi tradition, so I can't really comment on that. But what I do know is psychology, okay? And one of the things to understand about personality disorders is that there is an underlying concept in personality disorders that we tend to overlook, and that is lack of empathy. You know, the difference between a great leader and a psychopath is usually empathy. If somebody lacks empathy, then you got to worry about them. And what is empathy? Caring for other people. If you attack people publicly and you don't care about the consequences, you got to be careful about yourself, because it's anger, right? It's first. So look back at the hadith. Don't get angry, okay? Love for your brother what you love for yourself. Speak good or stay silent. All of these things get violated when you attack people publicly and you don't even care about it. It's a sign that there's no empathy. So if you're going to connect anything to a personality disorder, perhaps the first question you need to look at is there empathy in this person? If so, then chances are it would not qualify as a personality disorder.
That was a good answer, mashallah. Thank you. We'll take 2-3 more questions briefly, because I'm mindful that we need to end, even though we will love to be with you. Inshallah, we will invite you again, Dr. Qasqas. This is just the beginning of a Sahabi relationship inspired by the Sahabas. You know, so we have the Sahabi counseling, and then we have the Sahabi sohbah. So we will bring that about again, inshallah. So Brother Yunus, he is asking, how do you reconcile Islamic moral judgment versus guiding the person to find their own answers in classical Western counseling? In other words, is there a moral judgment in Islamic psychology? If there is, what is the balance between not being an imam versus psychologist when you differentiate? Jazakallah khair. That's a very good question, by the way.
Where's Yunus from?
Yunus is from, I think he is Turkish, but he lives in US, New York.
New York, okay. So I could summarize, I can respond to that in one statement that was mentioned in the presentation. Advice is saying the right things. Counseling is responding to the right things. Okay. So there's a lot of moral statements that we can make. Have sabr, make more dua, for example, right? These are right, they're not wrong. And I've kind of beat this one down a lot, and I've shared it a lot, because it's kind of one of those things where, you know, you got to get people thinking a little differently if they're going to become a counselor. So giving advice is, you know, sure, give advice, but if you can't adapt that advice to the person, then that's like giving a solution for a different problem. Make sense? So the idea is matching the problem and the solution. This is the essence of therapy and counseling and help, and you know, and part of our foundational principles in Islamic counseling is that every problem has a solution if it's matched. But the idea here is the matching process is where the hikmah, the knowledge and the judgment comes in, right? Because it's like a diagnosis. Once you've diagnosed the problem properly, then you have all these evidence-based practices that you can deal with. But if you've misdiagnosed the problem, well, you're treating a totally different problem. I hope that provides a little bit of insight into the solution or an answer to that.
Just to add to it, I really appreciate, Dr. Qasqas, your reflections. I was thinking balance between not being an imam and psychologist when you differentiate. There is a difference there. I mean, when it comes to our roles. So for instance, I'm trained in Islamic psychology and I'm a counselor, right? What I've been trained in is to see ourselves as rafiq, as companions, and that we work with our clients in certain realms. Beyond that realm, for instance, if we try to support our clients by being a vessel of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their healing trajectory towards perhaps elevating their nafs from a state of nafs al-lamara to nafs al-mutmaina, let's say, beyond that, that's not the realm of the counselor as I've been trained, and from an Islamic point of view. That is one. The second is that we're not there, as Dr. Qasqas earlier also said, he's not a faqih, even though he has, mashallah, training in Islamic disciplines. He's not a faqih, right? I'm not a faqih either. Some of counselors that we have in ISIP and psychologists are actually both psychologists and they are also
right.
And there are people who have both training, which is amazing, right? So when my clients come to me asking for some fit-related questions, I try to not answer those questions at all. I try to mirror back. So why are you asking me? To understand the psychological aspect of it. Now, some basic fit we know, of course, Fad al-Ain is something that all Muslims needs to know, but it's important to differentiate our roles. And I do believe that what we need to do, and there's something that we're trying to do in ISIP, is to advocate for understanding the differences in our roles, and also to collaborate closely with the imams and with the spiritual leaders in our local communities so that they can understand the role of an Islamic psychologist, because an Islamic psychologist in the modern context is a new role. All right, it's a new role. It's not defined yet. It's not understood by majority of people. So we need to differentiate that. For instance, a lot of people ask me for dream interpretation. I never do dream interpretation. And why is because it's only certain people in our tradition that are on that maqam station in their spiritual development that they can actually do dream interpretation. It's not for the general counselor or the general person. But what we tend to say is that we can learn from your dreams which state you are in, not by interpreting it, but by understanding it with you, reflecting with you. So it's very important that we differentiate our roles, dear brothers and sisters. And at the same time, we need to work multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary. So for instance, in ISIP, we're developing a model of interdisciplinary approach, how imams, counselors, psychotherapists, dietitians, etc., will work together for the healing trajectory of the client. And then imam can work with the spiritual health, the psychologist with the psychological health, the dietitian with the physical health, etc. All these health domains needs to be interconnected. So I just wanted to add to Brother Yunus and to Dr. Qasqas' excellent answer, this domain as well of differentiating the role. Barakallahu feekum. We have a last question, there's a lot of questions in the chat, and unfortunately, we only have 3 minutes left. And I'm mindful of your time as well, Dr. Qasqas. We're so honored to have you with us. So let me just go through the questions here and see. So yes.
Well, you find one.
2 questions. If you can give quick answers, Dr. Qasqas, we can do 2 questions. So Sister Fatima is asking, with regards to some trait that a therapist is struggling with themselves, for instance, anger, resentment, etc., how do they help a client struggling with the same issue if that is coming up? Very good question.
Get therapy yourself.
Yeah.
Next question.
Yeah, that's our teachers used to say the therapist needs to be in his or her spiritual wayfaring and working with themselves. It's
100%. Like, you have all these questions that you need answered, and they're leading to a lot of anxiety because uncertainty leads to anxiety. And the Prophet Muhammad said, "Innama shifa'ul 'iyya su'al." The cure for ignorance is inquiry. So ask more questions. You need to be in an environment where you can ask questions and get those answers. So like the brother that from New York was asking, I saw your response to that about, well, is there Islamic moral judgments within psychology? Well, if we remove our Islamic moral judgments, we're not Muslims. So 100% there has to be. But yes, there's going to be clashes though, right? So we got to be very careful. We're not walking into the lizard's hole anymore, my dear brothers and sisters. We're storming into the dragon's den. We got to be ready. All right, sorry, continue. That was one of my big drops.
So. Beautiful. By the way, Dragon's Den and Shark Tank, I like these series, by the way. They're very that's the other side of entrepreneurship. Nevertheless. All right, Sister Lena is asking, this is the last question. Assalamu alaikum, barakallahu feek for this lecture. May I ask, what aim should we think of while counseling a patient? Where do we lead our patient to when we respond to the right thing, which I have understood to be an intrusive thought? This is a big question, by the way. What is the core of Islamic psychology? Let's not answer that question because
let me quickly answer it because it was asked and get to the next one. Really, every therapy has a target, what they're actually targeting. So there is no such thing as we should target all things at all times for all people. There's unique therapies are rare, right? But some therapies are committed to something specific, and that's what makes it a therapy. So in this case, you heard Brother Sayyid say, well, we want to transfer them from here to here. In Islamic counseling psychology, what we're aiming to do is help them manage the shahawat, help them manage the intrusive, the instant stuff, right? Day to day, and engage in consistent, healthy behaviors. It's a simple approach. It's a but each therapy actually answers that question differently. So it's a good question though.
It's a great question. And Sister Lena, for you, we have a lot of resources in what is the core of Islamic psychology, because all of our lectures speaks about the cores of this field. So go to our YouTube channel, check the lectures, and also check our resource sharing groups. And I'm sure you will get a lot of answers there. It's a multiplex answer in many ways, but I think that Dr. Qasqas very beautifully and eloquently answered that the core was the domains of, you mentioned jasad and shahawat and qalb.
That's the model of the nafs for Islamic counseling psychology, right? But we have to support that. We have to provide evidence for that, and inshallah. That's what I'm doing is I'm trying to locate all of the, it's like psychoanalysis and behaviorism all over again. You know what I mean? Like we're emerging and subhanAllah, maybe that's another day, Brother Saeed.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Mahdi Qasqas, for taking your time during the holy month of Ramadan to be with us and share from your vast amount of knowledge, experience, and expertise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you tawfiq in all of your work and studies. We're honored to work with you. We're looking forward to work with you. We're looking forward to collaborate with you, and the communication will continue, inshallah. Also, I want to thank all of our brothers and sisters who have shared their questions in the chat, who sends their salams. All of your questions and reflections has been amazing, and we really appreciate your engagement. Please continue your engagement in our WhatsApp groups for resource sharing. We have been sharing them a couple of times in the chat. I'm sure many of you are already part of them. If not, please join. It's a lot of great opportunities there to connect with one another, to share resources, and to discuss and learn from each other, inshallah. I want to thank Sister Fatima Ahmed, the co-founder of ISIP, and Sister Nadira, the project manager for our international lecture series, for their excellent work. It's an honor to be with all of you. And I also want to thank most of, I'm just reading in the chat. Yes, Dr. Mahdi, we will do it, inshallah. We will do it. I also want to thank all of our colleagues all over the world for the amazing contributions you're doing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your siyam and qiyam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your good deeds. Please keep the whole ISIP in your precious dua. Please forgive us for any shortcomings from our side. If we have done anything wrong, said anything wrong, or organized in an errored way, all of the faults are ours and our mind personally. And if anything good has come from our initiatives and our ways of working, it's all from Allah Azza wa Jal. So let's end by listening to Dr. Qasqas' request again. 30 seconds, just say Assalamu alaikum and Mah salama, and send your salams to all of us and to each and every of you. And we will end the session from there. And in 2 weeks, we will have another lecture in ISIP as part of our international lecture series. More about the topic and the theme and the lecturer will be shared in all of our WhatsApp groups, all of our social medias, and also our newsletter, inshallah. We're also doing a lot of other initiatives as well. So just briefly highlighting ISIP Scandinavian and Nordic chapter, which involves Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, and Finland. We're doing a Ramadan series. I'm actually doing the first lecture tomorrow. It will be about the psychology of Ramadan, but in Swedish. So psykologin av Ramadan. So that's for all of you who are from Scandinavia, who either understand or speak Swedish, Norwegian, or Danish, or Icelandic. You're more than welcome to join. Information will be shared in all of our groups, inshallah. The second thing that is happening, the ISIP's Malaysian chapter is doing a Ramadan series as well in Bahasa Malaysian. That's also going on. ISIP's Arabic chapter has a lot of things going on and during Ramadan, and a lot of other of our local and regional chapters are doing a lot of things. We have our Tarbiyah and Parenting Task Force who's doing initiatives during Ramadan, our social media task force and infographic task force as well. So please update yourself and check out our website or our WhatsApp groups. An honor to be with all of you, dear brothers and sisters. You're all doing an amazing job. So open up your microphones now and just say salam to everyone, and we just end with that, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you, Brother Saeed. Mahdi, mashallah.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.